Hello there! It's this special time of the year where the nights get longer and the days get darker, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. So it's time for a spooky episode. Well, actually not really spooky and more fascinating. We're going to talk about mummies. How they were created, what they meant to the cultures that made them, and the concept of personhood. Enjoy! (1922). Egyptologist Howard Carter and his team just made a sensational discovery: the tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Aside from lavish treasure, there are also the mortal remains of the great king. He is now what we call a mummy, a word originally borrowed from medieval Arabic mumia via the Latin mumia. The true origin, however, lies in the Persian language, where it originally meant asphalt or even wax. So right away, a mummy is not referred to with a word that describes a corpse, but rather as an object. This is not so much due to the practices of mummification of the body, but rather that parts of the mummies were long used in alchemy and medicine. Not all the substances which were called mummia or mumia were actually made from mummies. Sometimes when the word is used, it actually refers to natural asphalt or pitch. Apothecaries all over Europe, the Middle East and Northern Africa would sell it as a cure-all remedy. Everything we call mummies today are of course human remains, and they are no longer used as medicine. Mummies can be created in different ways, and not all actually need human embalmers. The famous mountain mummy Ötzi from the Alps, for example, is a natural mummy, preserved by the ice and snow of the mountains. Similarly, mummies are often preserved in bogs, the so-called bog bodies, often found in northern Europe. Dry climates like in Lebanon can also preserve mummies. Human-made mummies are more common, as they have been created by different cultures across the globe. The Inca, for example, had a special relationship with royal mummies that were used as advisors by the reigning kings and often involved in ceremonies. Certain sects of Buddhism practice mummification to preserve the bodies of great monks, sometimes with the help of so-called self-mummification. During this process, a monk would attempt to dry out their own body as much as possible. However, today we will focus on Egyptian mummies, no doubt the most well-known of all mummies. Let's travel back to the year 1323 BCE, a few days after Pharaoh Tutankhamun had passed away. Mind you, there are no direct sources for his embalming, so speculation will be involved in this part. Priests, led by a head embalmer, notable for wearing a jackal mask in honor of the god Anubis, will prepare the body for its final journey. First, they must remove the brain. How this was done is not exactly known, but the most commonly referred method was a hook. This hook would have been inserted into the nose to first liquefy the brain, then drain it out of the nostrils, while the hook would scoop out any clumps. The now mostly empty skull was filled with tree resin and perfumes to both preserve the head from the inside and improve the odor. Next, the belly was sliced open to remove the intestines and all organs, including his heart. Removing the heart was actually usually not done, but Tutankhamun was buried without it. The exact reason for this is unknown. It might have been an accident, or done on purpose. The now emptied body was filled with resin and aromatic plants to prop up the body and once again suppress the putrid smells. The organs were placed in canopic jars, where they would be guarded by the 4 sons of Horus. Now the body was completely covered and partly filled with a special salt found in Egypt, known as natron. For the next up to 70 days, the salt would dry out the body, giving the priests enough time to prepare for the next step. After the body of the king was sufficiently dried up, it was washed and covered in wine, oils, and resin. Once more to improve the smell situation, but also to make the body more adhesive for the next step, which was to start wrapping it in linen. Magic spells were added to the wrapping to protect Tutankhamun on his way to the field of reeds, the Egyptian afterlife. The wraps were also decorated with gold resin ornaments depicting scarabs, wings, hands holding symbols of authority, and more. The head of the king was covered by a heavy golden mask, depicting Osiris, the king of the underworld and mythological first pharaoh of the mortal world. Above the face is the Nemes headdress, adorned with a vulture, the symbol of divine protection. This all was the result of rituals and processes that were known to the Egyptians for thousands of years by the time they were practiced on Tutankhamun. The oldest man-made mummies were only recently dated back to about 5,600 years ago. The tomb of the king, like his ancestors before him, was lavishly decorated with treasure. Gold, ivory, fine wood furniture, and more would accompany Tutankhamun into the afterlife. Carter and his team were floored when they found the tomb mostly intact. Tutankhamun might have been one of the pharaohs with the least amount of treasure, considering his reign was somewhat short and not very notable from what we can tell. Ironically, this was the reason why we found the treasure in the first place. Grave robbers that plundered so many other tombs have overlooked him. The true treasure was, however, the king's body. It told us so much about him, his dynasty, and Egyptian culture. In fact, thousands of years after his death, Tutankhamun became once again a symbol for the Egyptian nation, perhaps even more so than during his reign. In terms of fate, Tutankhamun could be considered fortunate in his second career. He landed in a museum and is to this day open for study. However, we lost a lot of mummies, not just due to careless looters and alchemists, but also during the time of Egyptomania. In early 19th century Europe, people realized what amazing treasures and rich culture was buried under the sands of Egypt. Wealthy Europeans rushed to buy trinkets and treasures from the land of the Nile. Highly popular as a curiosity were mummies, that were then displayed at parties and sometimes even feasted on. To this day, we cannot tell how many mummies were destroyed during this time. It is bad enough that we lost valuable historical insights, but even worse is the desecration of human remains. "Speak my name" was a phrase commonly found in Egyptian tombs to remind those who entered their final resting place. A reminder that this was not a place to store valuables, but a place to honor and remember a person. This is something we should do well to remember. Mummies should not be something to cut apart and sold as remedies of questionable quality, nor should be something to be gawked at parties. Mummies are the remains of people and should be treated with due respect. This concludes today's episode. I hope I could spark your interest in this fascinating topic. Once again, thanks to my artist and to you viewers. Please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe if you enjoy this content. Until next time, bye!